The fish that walk on land. This pond is the only home this fish has ever known, but lately it's gotten crowded and food is scarce. Luckily, it has an option many don't. As a walking catfish, it can dance its way out of water and on to bigger and better things. However, it faces many challenges on its terrestrial journey. It's now in danger of suffocating, drying up, suffering physical damage from rough terrain, and being hunted by land predators. We think of fish as completely aquatic animals, but the walking catfish is just one of hundreds of fish species that are actually amphibious, meaning they possess adaptations that enable them to survive on land. Fish amphibiousness is the spectrum. At one end are species like the mosquito fish that only move on land when forced, and the other end are species like muskrats that nonchalantly hop around mudflats for days at a time. But why do fish make the exodus from water to land, and how do they cope with this drastic transition? If temperatures get too high for the mangrove rebellions in the shallow tropical pools it inhabits, it reflects itself onto the bank and cool off in the shade. During the dry periods, it can survive for 2 months out of water by staying in moist environments. Meanwhile, the eel catfish makes its onshore voyage to satisfy its hearty craving for beetles. And for others, the terrestrial drought is more ritualistic. Every year, under the cover of night, masses of California grognia flock their way onto sandy beaches, where female deposits thousands of eggs into the sand before re-entering the ocean. On the water, fish breed with gills, which are vital organs packed with blood vessels that absorb dissolved oxygen from the water. But in the open air, their gills collapse and are rendered useless. So amphibious species need other ways to breathe. The Amur catfish's stomach is packed with blood vessels so it can go down the air and breathe through its stomach lining. And lungfish, being related to the ancestor of all tetrapods or four-limbed vertebrates, are equipped with truly lung. They are actually drowned if they are kept underwater too long. Fish have thin, permeable skin that allows for essential compounds to diffuse into and out of their bodies while they are underwater. But this works against them on land, as their bodily moisture diffuses into the air. To dodge dehydration, mud skippers roll in the mud like puppies. But the lungfish takes the cake. The rivers inhabited disappear during dry seasons, so it buries itself in the earth and coats its body in a mucous cocoon. It can survive like this for years until being resuscitated by next spring rainstorm. Amphibious fishes use powerful fins to move on land and clever to navigate as they go. The notably rock climbing goby, no bigger than a few centimeters, scale hundreds meter tall Hawaiian waterfalls, inches its way up by ultimately attaching the suction cups on its snout and pelvic fin. To find water while on land, the mamachong, like most amphibious species, is on the lookout for reflective surfaces. Other species, like mosquito fish, exercise their inner ear to determine where they are oriented on a slope, relying on the probability that they will find water by moving downhill. Our walking catfish, meanwhile, uses the taste buds that coats its body for navigation. These taste buds are concentrated in its whisker, which whip through the air, sensing compounds that signal the proximity and quality of the nearby water and the prey. The walking catfish will shimmy towards attractive volatile amino acids while streaks clear of foul water, emanating hydrogen sulfide. While amphibious species face multitudes of new challenges upon leaving the water, they evolved ingenious ways of overcome them. Their resilience in the face of droughts and floods, and have access to new prey, as well as a plan B if they need to escape competitive, polluted, or unhealthy environments. While being a fish out of water is generally regarded as a bad thing, for these species, it offers an undisputed edge. One more. This pond is the only home this fish has ever known, but lately it's gotten crowded and food is scarce. Luckily, it has an option many don't. As a walking catfish, it can dance its way out of the water and on to bigger and better things. However, it faces many challenges in a terrestrial journey. It's now in danger of suffocating, drying up, suffering physical damage from riparian and be hunted by land predators. We think of fish as completely aquatic animals, but the walking catfish is just one of the hundreds of fish species that are actually amphibious, meaning they possess adaptation that enable them to survive on land. Fish amphibiousness is the spectrum. At one end are species like the mosquito fish that only move on land when forced. At the other end, the species like mud skippers that nonchalantly hop around mud flats for days at a time. But why do fish make the exodus from the water to land? And how do they cope with this drastic transition? If temperatures get too high for the mangrove rebellions in the shallow tropical pools it inhabits, it will flip itself onto the bank and cool off in the shade. During the dry period, it can survive for 2 months out of the water by staying in the moist environment. Meanwhile, the eel catfish makes its onshore voyage. It satisfies its hearty craving for betel. For another, the terrestrial drought is more ritualistic. Every year, under the cover of night, masses of California Grania flop their ways onto sandy beaches, where females deposit thousands of eggs into the sand before re-entering the ocean. On the water, fish breathe with gills, which are feathery organs packed with blood vessels that absorb dissolved oxygen from the water. But in open air, their gills collapse and they return useless. So amphibious species need other ways to breathe. The armored catfish's stomach is packed with blood vessels so it can't go down the air and breathe through its stomach lining. And the lungfish, being related to the ancestor of all tetrapods or four-limbed vertebrates, are equipped with truly lungs. They are actually drowned if they are kept under the water too long. Fish have thin, permeable skin that allowed for sessile compounds to diffuse out of their bodies while they are underwater. But this works against them on land, as their bodily moisture diffuses into the air. To dodge dehydration, most skippers roll in the mud like puppies. But the lungfish takes the cake. The rivers inhabit disappear during dry seasons, so it's buried itself in the earth and coats its body in a mucous cocoon. It can survive like this for years until being resuscitated by the next big rainstorm. Amphibious species use powerful things to move on land and clever tools to navigate it as they go. The notorious rock climbing goby, no bigger than a few centimeters, scale hundreds of meters tall Hawaiian waterfalls, inches its way up to by ultimately attaching the suction cups on its mouth and pelvic fin. To find water while in land, the murmur-chong, like the most amphibious species, is on the lookout for reflexible surfaces. Other species, like mosquito fish, exercise their inner ear to determine where they orient on a slope, relying on probability they do find water while moving downhill. Our walking fish, meanwhile, uses the taste bud that coats its body for navigation. This taste bud has concentrated its whisper, which whip through the air, sensing compound the signal the possibility and quality of nearby water and prey. The walking catfish will swim toward the attractive volatile amino acids, while stays clear of foul water, eliminating hydrogen disulfide. While amphibious fish face multitudes of new challenges upon leaving the water, they involve the ingenious ways to overcome them, their resilience in the face of drought and floods, and have access to new prey, as well as a plan B if they need to escape competitive, polluted, or unhealthy environments. While being a fish out of water is generally regarded as a bad thing, for this species it offers an undisputed edge.